right, so in the previous video, we talked about loops and specifically while loop. And in this video, we're going to go through another example on while loop. So with while loop, again, to recap, you are going to start with your program and then you get to a condition. And then you check that condition or conditions, and then depending on if that is true or false, you're going to make a decision, or your program is going to make a decision if it needs to go through the statements you have or not. And then it's going to repeat that until the condition is not true anymore or if it's false. With while loop, I told you that there are 4 steps that I want you to follow to never go wrong when it comes to while loop. So if you follow those steps in the exact same order they come, you're always going to have a correct while loop. Sometimes the students misplace stuff in the steps and it's going to kind of mess up the whole while loop. So follow the steps as they come in the exact same order that we have them and don't miss any of these steps. So the first step is you need to initialize your conditional variable or variables, depending on how many we have. To keep it simple, for the first few examples, we only having one conditional variable. So you initialize that variable, similar to previous example in which you wanted to repeat something a number of times. You picked a start value for your counter, and then you set your condition. So for your condition, you set an end value. So you're going to go up until you get to that number, and that is in a statement that defines if you need to continue or stop. And then inside your while loop, you're going to put your statements. It could be 1 line, it could be 100 lines, depending on what your problem is. And then at the very end of that, and the end of your statements, you're going to update your conditional variable. So whatever that variable was, you're going to update it to make sure this condition at some point becomes false, which is in most case scenarios that you want your loop to end. You want your loop to stop at some point. There are few cases in which your while loop has a condition that is always true and you always go through stuff, and then there are different ways that you end that while loop, but we are not going to do that through this course, right? In this course, we're always going to follow those 4 steps, step 1, 2, 3, and 4, in the exact same order that we have them. After you get really good, when you get to other classes, then you can try different methods of having and omitting one of these steps if you want to. But in this course, again, I want to see all of those steps in this exact same order. All right, now let's go back to our previous example, and we are going to change it slightly. So I'm going to get rid of this one. So in this case, I want to print numbers from 1 to 10. So again, same concept. If I ask you to print numbers 1 to 10, you're going to say, okay, print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4, print 5. I'm going to go to 5 to just for the sake of time. And then it simply basically goes through and prints those numbers for you. But what if I ask you print the first 500 numbers? So then it becomes challenging, hard, time-consuming to go through and put those print statements one by one. So should be easier way for us to do that. That is the whole point of like writing programs. You want to solve problems, and that is a very, very simple problem. You want to print numbers from 1 to 500, and you want to have like a simple code to do that for you. So loops are good whenever you have a pattern, right? In this case, the pattern is the numbers are incremental. You're going from 1, and next number is just 1 more than the previous one. Next one is just 1 more than the previous one. So there is a pattern. And whenever you see a pattern and you see that pattern is being repeated, that is a good example, and that is a tell for you this should be a loop. All right, so I'm going to slightly change this one. Whenever I'm giving a problem like this, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that pattern and try to find a way that my statements are looking very similar to each other, so I can have one statement that I can repeat over and over again. All right, so let's think about it. Again, as I said, these numbers are incrementing. So I'm going to use a variable to set up my numbers. I'm going to start from 1, which is my initial value that I'm going to start. And I'm going to basically print that variable. So print num. And then in the next line, what I'm going to do is this value is just 1 more than the previous one. So I'm going to say num is equal to num plus 1. All right, so now if I put this one, if I print num again, num now is 2 because I added 1 to the previous value of the num. Now it's 2 and you print that. If I add this line at the end of this line and say, okay, now add 1 more to num, it becomes 3 and you just print num. As you see, now we have a pattern. We have these 2 lines that we are repeating over and over again. I put that there. Okay, so I have num starts from 1 and I'm printing num, and then I add 1 to it and then print it again. Add another value to another 1 to it, print it, and so on and so forth. So you're repeating this over and over. I think I did it to up to 4. So you just need to add 1 more print statement here to go to 5 if you want to. Okay, so as you see, now I found a pattern. These 2 lines are repeated 5 times, right? So again, when it comes to loops, is all about finding that pattern that you're repeating. And if you find that pattern, you simply put it inside a loop. So the next part is very simple. We just follow those 4 steps and we create a loop for ourselves. So again, I don't need all of these lines anymore. These are the 2 lines I'm going to use and repeat them over and over. I'm going to keep them for now. I'm going to set my header for my while loop. So I'm going to say while, as long as this num is less than 5, for now we are going to go with less than 5, and then we are going to modify that based on the output we are getting. So start from num 1, which is our conditional variable. We set that as 1, and then we are saying, okay, as long as this num is less than 5, I want to keep going. So that means these 2 lines need to be indented, needs to be part of the while loop that we have. Okay, so we have a step 1, initializing a conditional variable. And as you see, I'm using the same variable that I'm printing as my conditional variable. And that is totally fine. You can have a separate variable for them, or you can use one variable for both, depending on the problem, depending if it's doable, if it's possible. So you have that conditional variable and the value you're using for your statement. And then you're checking if it's less than 5, and then you have your statements. So you print that num, and then you add to it, right? You first print it because we want to print 1. So the order of operations are very important. You want to have this one first and then add to it. And then, so step 1 again, step 2, you set your condition. And step 3, which are your statements, all right? Our statements, now we have 2 lines of code, one print and then one adding one value to it. Now we need to put our step 4. Again, if we don't put our step 4, it's going to kind of mess up the entire system. Our step 4 is kind of embedded into our statement. So since we have the same variable for our conditional statement, we are increasing that, we are incrementing it in our statement. So we kind of have our step 4 here already. So we don't need to do anything about it. So step 1, step 2, we are printing and we are incrementing our number. So if we run this one, it's going to print 1 to 4 for us, because again, very similar to the previous example, 5 is not included, and there are different ways that you can include that 5. I'm going to go with less or equal, which makes sure that 5 is included. And you can simply change this number to any value that you want, and it's going to print those values for you. So in this case, if let's say I want to print all of the numbers from 10 to 15, so you just change your start value, you change your end value, and it's going to go from 10 to 15. So depending on what values you want, you can change them. So now I want you to print all of the values from 15 to 10. So instead of going forward, so incrementing, I want to go backward. I want to go from 15, a bigger number, to a smaller number. So pause the video for a second and then see if you can do it, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. So it's very simple. So basically, our start and end value is going to change. Our start value is going to start from 15. We want to start from 15, and we want to go all the way to 10. So I change the start value, which is 15, and then end value to 10. So if I run this one, I'm not going to get any output. I'm not going to get any number. The reason is, if you're at number 15, 15, first of all, is not less than 10. So you never get inside this while loop. It's going to skip it altogether. So I need to change this condition. I'm going to say as long as this num is greater than 10, because our start value is greater than our end value. So we need to change that operator to account for the different problem that we have. So is num greater than 10? Is 15 greater than 10? Yes, it is. So you print it. Now, if I add 1 to 10, to 15, sorry, you're going to get number 16. So you're getting away from 10. However, we want to get closer to 10. That means instead of incrementing it, we need to decrement it. We need to go down. So we need to subtract 1 from num to get closer to 10. So from 15, you subtract 1, you get to 14. And then next iteration, you subtract 1, you get to 13, and then 12, 11, and then 10. So that way, you're going to go from 15 to 10. So, yeah. So you changed your start and end value. You changed the operator to make sure you have the right condition there. And then you need to change your operator here to decrement to get closer to the smaller value that you had. Okay, you see, like, you can change them to different problems and solve them. So the next problem I want you to do is I want you to print all of the values from, again, let's go from 1 to 10. So all the values from 1 to 10. Actually, let's change this one. Print all the values, all the even values from 1 to 10. Okay, so now go ahead, pause the video, try to do it, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. So hopefully you were able to do it. So if I'm given a problem like this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solve the bigger problem. The bigger problem is, can I print numbers 1 to 10, right? And then I'm going to focus on printing even numbers. So let's start with that. The start value is 1, end value is 10. Make sure the sign is correct. So we are going to say as long as num is less or equal to 10, and we want to increment to get closer to the end value. So if you run this one, we should get 1 to 10. We're going to test that, see the output. The next step, I'm going to focus on this even part. There are multiple ways that you can get to it. There are different solutions for it. So the first solution I'm going to try is, what if I change my step? So if you start from 1 and jump 2, you're going to get 1, 3, 5, 7, so on and so forth. So if I run this one, it gives me all of the odd numbers from 1 to 10. So to fix it, I'm going to change my start value to 2, which is the first even number from 1 to 10. And then you jumping 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. That gives you all of the even numbers that you want between 1 and 10. The other way is, okay, let's say you are starting from 1 and you're going to jump 1. You can set a condition here. You can combine a loop with a conditional to check to see if a number is even or odd. To do that, I'm going to go back to this shell. I'm going to test something here. So in real world, how would you know a number is even or odd? So basically, what you do in your head, in your brain, is you're going to see if a number is divisible by another number. So if you have number 10, you know 10 is divisible by 2 because if you divide 10 by 2, there is no remainder. And we have an operator for that. So if you have 10 modulo 2, it's going to give you 0. If you have an odd number and you get the modulo, it's going to give you 1. It is same for any other number, any other values that you want to check. If you want to see if 6 is divisible by 3, for instance, if there is no remainder, that means 6 is divisible by 3. If you have a number and it is not, if you have a remainder, that means it is not divisible by 3. So with odd and even, it is basically you are looking to see if a number is divisible by 2. If it's divisible by 2, if you get 0, it is an even number. If it's not divisible by 2, you have an odd number. And again, it applies to any other number if you want to check to see if a number is divisible by another. Okay, so going back to our problem that we have here, we want to see, we want only print even numbers. So to do that, what I'm going to do is after I set my condition, it goes through, prints all of the first 10 numbers, 1 to 10. Here, I'm going to set a condition to force it to only print the numbers if they are even. If they're not even, I'm not going to print them. So I'm going to put my condition here. I'm going to check to see if this num is divisible by 2. If modulo 2 is 0, that means we have an even number. Then I want to print it. If it's not divisible by 2, then ignore it, skip it, move on. Go to the next number, add 1 to it, check it. If the condition is still true, go back through the statements that we have. So as you see, I'm combining a conditional with a while loop to get to the solution that I'm looking for. So if you run this one, it's going to go through and print all of the even numbers for you. In this case, you don't need to worry about the start value or end value or the step because you're going to check to see if that number is divisible by 2. If I change this one to odd, you simply change this one and say if it's not 0, then print it. So if you do that, it's going to print all of the odd numbers. Or again, similar to the previous solution, you can not have a conditional and then change your step and play with your step. So again, with different problems that you're given, there are different solutions. And most of them are equally correct. So just practice different solution that gives you more creativity to be able to solve more difficult and more complex problems.